Welcome, everyone, to another fantastic episode of Here to Tinpot 2. Now, I know that every time we start one of these episodes, I'll say roll theme music or something will happen. You'll obviously heard the little intro that we've done, which all sounds very Beyongy and Sharon made that. So any feedback, point that Sharon's way. What we are getting though, aren't we, Sharon, next week? Well, firstly, let me say, everybody, welcome to Sharon.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. I'm glad that Sharon spoke then, because most of this goes out on audio. So waving is not going to help in terms of an audio podcast. But it's only been like 10 episodes, so we're getting there. Maybe we'll talk about Go Ape in terms of Sharon's ability to take on new information, but we'll skip over that. So yes, what next week we are getting extremely fancy podcasting equipment. Now, when I say fancy, I mean I think it's really fancy, to be honest, because we're getting cameras, lighting, computers, microphones, a mixing desk, and the ability to have callings.
Oh, yeah. We've got full on different sounds and all sorts, haven't we?
Well, I'm going to get, I forgot the name of it, so don't worry, there will be an episode on our new equipment that there's got a little lighting, like a 1990s DJ, imagine. So this isn't me going, oh, and here we go. What accent was that? I was trying to do a 90s DJ, you know, when they go, and where? Who's that? I have no idea. I'm trying to get, anyway, you know, when they go, and we're going to spin them one more time. I can't do it anyway. Anyway, we're going to be like a 90s DJ, but I can press the buttons and make Trump noises and stuff like that. So, and I've got control of that. So if Sharon's saying something that we don't agree with, listeners, I can just go.
You wish you had control of that.
But this episode is all about the climate change conference of the parties, which is also known as COP26. So we wanted to do an episode on sustainability for a number of reasons. One, because that's core in terms of our business offering. So for those of you who don't know, Here to Tinpot 2 is our podcast. And when I say our podcast, that's MKL Innovation. So we're a digital FM business. What we do, not to bore everyone to death with it, but we go into organizations and we optimize it through technology. So saving loads of energy, saving loads of money. And we've talked about all sorts of things on this podcast, from running to cars to books to films. It just made sense with the conference going on to give our 2 pence, so to speak, on sustainability. Now, I would say we're not experts. We know some stuff.
One of us knows more than the other.
Wow.
So listeners, Mark has got a master's in sustainability from Cambridge.
I'm sorry, Mark, from where?
From Cambridge University. So Mark is a bit more of an expert than I am, let's put it that way. But yes, sustainability is really at the core of what we do, and a lot of our customers really care about it, and that is something that attracts customers to us. And when we build the tech and the dashboards, a lot of that is centered around the green targets that companies have, which are often quite ambitious. So it is something that, from a customer experience, of course, I'm going to get out that in there. That is something that customers really care about, and we produce dashboards which show how companies are reducing their carbon. So that is a key bit. But also, what's our spirit animal, Mark?
It's the mighty bumblebee.
It is, yeah, which is a huge symbol of sustainability, and one of the reasons why we picked it, amongst other reasons. But yeah, that fits in very nicely into this.
Well, the bee is fantastic for technology. So when we chose the bee as our spirit animal, we use it on our branding as well. But the reason why we chose the bee was we always found in those early days when we were talking to people and businesses and anybody that would listen to us, really, that when it came to explaining IoT, and more so the sensors side of it. People who are from not technical backgrounds, which is the vast majority of our customers when we speak to them, because you're not necessarily selling to technical people, you're selling to commercial people. They've got some understanding of it, but not the actual nuances of how it works. So the way we found to describe it was to explain it like a bee. So the bee will go from the hive or the hub or whatever we decide to call it, depending on which client it's going into. And that bee will go off as a sensor and collect all that lovely pollen data, bring it back to the hive, make some sense of it, and then produce wonderful larvae. But in our case, it's not larvae, it's wonderful dashboards and reports and things.
I mean, nectar. Do you mean nectar or do you mean larva?
Bees produce larvas. Okay. Do they? Well, they don't lay eggs. Do they lay eggs? What do bees do? Bees produce larvae. They do.
Okay. All right. I was thinking of like...
And nectar as well, and honey. Yeah. And they do that other thing as well that bees are well known for, creating. I mean, obviously, you can see that I don't work in our marketing department, so... yeah, I'll leave that one there. Yes, but Sharon was so kind as to say that some of us, darling, have been to Cambridge University and got a master's degree in sustainability. I mean, I really enjoyed that course. It's absolutely fantastic. I would highly recommend anybody listening to this from across the world, actually, to go and do that course. And within this podcast, when we're talking about sustainability, we're going to bounce around all over the place, but we will keep it on point in terms of sustainability. So my journey with sustainability started a long time ago. I was a project manager, a program manager, asked to look after different aspects of a sustainability program within an organization that I worked in at the time. Found it really interesting, did a little bit of research, wanted to learn more, because I think when you find something quite interesting, you want to really immerse yourself in that field. And why wouldn't you then go and try to find the best course in the world to do this in? And that's when I came across the University of Cambridge. Now, Cambridge do various different qualifications within sustainability. So they've got, let me explain, they've got executive education. They can do online courses. They've got 1-day courses, 3-day courses, 6 months courses, but they've got the postgraduate study, which is the master's in sustainability. And that is, I think it took me 2.5 years, 3 years to do that. Very intense course. As you would imagine from Cambridge, what I really did enjoy, not so much at the time, but now looking back that I've done it, is they don't lower their standards for part-time students. So I had a job at the same time as studying for the course. And I remember speaking to a lady who was quite a senior lady in Shell, the oil company, and she was on cohort 4 and we were cohort 6. This is back in 2015, and we were cohort 6. And I said to her at the time, what was it like? Did you enjoy it? Was it good? Blah, blah, blah. And she went, I would rather give birth to a child again than go through that course, because yes, it opened my eyes and it was wonderful and fantastic. But in regards to its toughness of actually getting it done and meeting the deadlines and taking the information in, it's not just the information that you're given on a course like that, it's your peer group that you're with. Mm-hmm. So when we attended that, we were, I say me, when I attended that, I think I was one of 4 or 5 Brits on the course, and there was about 60 people. Everybody else was from all over the world, which is one of the main reasons why the course is fantastic, because you get to meet people you just wouldn't meet, people from Tonga and all these sorts of different places. You just wouldn't meet these people down the Wetherspoons in Leeds. Why would you? But when you're meeting these people and you're talking about the challenges that they have in their world, you very much think, wow, we've actually not got it that bad in the UK, mm-hmm. But some people are really struggling, and sustainability for them is not just a corporate buzzword that someone will have on a CSR report somewhere, or signing up to one or a couple of the sustainable development goals and saying, look at us doing our bit. For them, it's life or death. It's their village is going to flood. They're going to be able to feed their kids, or they're not. And that was a real humbling moment to hear it from actual real people rather than a politician or in a very fancy CSR brochure. I mean, you worked in the airline industry for a long time, Sharon. I'm sure that, I mean, airlines are, extremely polluting industry. I can imagine that you've seen loads of things in terms of sustainability, but I know that wasn't your focus area when you were in the airline industry, but when you were working in it, did you feel that the business took it seriously? Did you feel that it was something they really wanted to do, or did you feel like it was something they were doing because consumers and legislation is pushing them that way?
I'd say a bit of both, really. And having gone to Cranfield, both uni and flying lessons, I love seeing the kind of the technological advances being made there, like the new types of fuel, the way that they're setting up their new headquarters there to test out the new innovations, which a lot of that is from sustainable viewpoint for aviation. There was a lot of talk about how we cut waste, how do we reduce the amount of load in an aircraft, which obviously then uses up more fuel, lighter seating, all that kind of stuff, which over time does really reduce the carbon output. So yeah, it was very high on the agenda. And yes, passengers are very interested in that. So yeah, I'd say it was both. It was kind of a push and a pull inside the aviation industry. And
it's interesting, isn't it? Because we say customers or passengers in this case are interested in it, but you argue, would you pay more for your product for it to be sustainable? And what I think where we've lost the debate in terms of sustainability, unfortunately, is the science is well known. Now, there will be people that will be watching this and they will be adamant that the planet naturally heats and cools. And of course it does. But the science is there, equivocal science to show that since the Industrial Revolution, man-made pollution has significantly increased the temperature of the planet. As I don't care who's watching this and who doesn't believe that. It is true. And if you don't believe it, then please go away and do some more research. Or indeed, go on the masters at Cambridge, because those guys very much know what they're talking about, and that really opened my eyes to some of the challenges I've got. But where I hate that, where the debate has fallen down, is almost in the science itself that it's fallen down. So COP26 is going on at the moment, and if you're listening to this back after the fact, then hopefully we've come to some really fantastic arrangements, and it's not just a talking seminar. Hopefully it's not just a talking seminar. But naturally all the media jump on this. So they'll jump on it and they'll be doing little reports. So, this is where the UK is going. This is what we should be doing. This is what we could do. And I remember watching, when I was getting ready in the morning, BBC Breakfast. I've got nothing wrong with the BBC. I'm not really a political person, but it was just what was on at the time. And they had a reporter in a typical house. So a typical 3-bedroom house, typical family, not rich, not poor, just sort of middle of the road family, sort of 2 cars, kids, 2 kids, just a normal family. And they were talking to the mother about recycling, and they were getting a little lad on camera, to take stuff out of the normal bin and put it into the recycling bin, all that cute stuff. And you go, oh, bless him, he's doing his part and he feels really good. But then in walked this environmental expert. And for those that are not watching this and can hear it, I'm doing the air quotes, environmental expert. And this is where the science really doesn't match, where the rubber meets the road. So this expert came in, walked around the house, chatting to the mother. What heating have you got here? Well, it's gas. It's gas central heating. You really want to think about ripping that out and putting electric in? Okay. Can we have a look in the fridge? Yeah. Go have a look in the fridge. So she's looking in the fridge. I'm noticing cheese. I can see some milk. There's some meat in there. And then she starts talking about methane from animals and deforestation, which is all real. Deforestation in regards to clearing that room for cattle. You might want to think about going vegetarian or even vegan. Okay. What have you got on the driveway? Just 2 cars. I think one of them was Vauxhall Insignia, and the other one was like a Mondeo or whatever it was, diesel cars. You might want to change those to electric. And I'm watching this and I'm going, right, I know what you are saying, Mrs. Expert, is correct, technically is correct. But this for me is where it really doesn't work for the average consumer. You can't come in finger wagging and saying, rip all your central heating system out. And by the way, put electric in. I know you might like your chicken nuggets and all that lot, mate, little man who's 7 years old, but how about you eat this instead? I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being vegan, but you can't really force people to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. And also, those two cars on the drive, why don't you change it for a Vauxhall Leaf or a Tesla? It's just never going to happen. It's just never going to happen because everybody's got their, as I would say, their bullshit to deal with. They want to play their part, and I want to play my part. You want to play your part, Sharon. But don't finger wag and tell me that I'm doing something wrong when the mechanisms around me to help me to do something right are not necessarily there. So did you see recently that there was an initiative? I think it was to change boilers. And you change these boilers out. I can't remember what the name of the boilers were. I think it was a highly efficient or a hydrogen boiler or something like that. So families can go for the grant, take out their boilers and put one of these super fancy sustainable boilers in. Fantastic piece of technology. Take the technology in itself, it is brilliant. Very, very low emissions, if not no emissions, if I'm thinking of the right thing that the boiler is. But it's a £5,000 boiler, and the cost of what a traditional boiler, gas boiler, is about £3,000. But okay, I can get a grant for £2,500. So I can pay £2,500 for that boiler. Okay, great. So I'm £500 up because I don't have to pay £5,000 for that boiler. But that bursary that the government are giving is such a small amount that if you and I, Sharon, arguably in the middle of the road sort of people, we're not rich, not poor, wanted to go and get it, we wouldn't get the grant. So we'd then have to go, I'll have to pay £5,000 for a boiler instead of £3,000. Now that for me is you'd have to be quite wealthy to be able to spend an additional £2,000 on the boiler because you wanted to do the right thing. You show me any family that could potentially do that who wasn't well off. It just wouldn't happen.
It's not just the payment either, it's the disruption. So we need a new boiler, and ripping out a boiler in a household, all the painting, pipe work, everything you've got to do on top of that. So you've got to make it easy for people to be able to adopt this, and as you say, put the infrastructure and the support systems around it. I do like it when companies make it easier to do the kind of the green stuff, like when you order your Sainsbury's and there's the different slots for deliveries, and some of them are green slots and some of them are normal slots, and there's some of them are slightly cheaper, but you can see which ones are green, so you can go, okay, well, for half an hour I'll move it to a green slot. I like stuff like that where it's not disruptive, but you can do your bit, and that's what we need to see more of.
Well, that's the key thing, isn't it? It's frustrating, but it's also exciting at the same time, because those organizations that get it and make it easy for people to make that switch will win this argument, will win this debate. But finger wagging and telling people they're doing the wrong thing when they, human beings want to do the right thing, we do. But if there's not the mechanisms in place to help them, and this is where the government really does need to step in and support. I've been having a look this afternoon at the government's net zero strategy. Please Google it if you'd like to. It's on HM government website. It's a big blue document that says on the front of it, net zero, build back greener. Now, if you're a loser like me, you will have gone through quite a lot of that report, and it will say loads of cool things, and there'll be loads of ambitious strategies in there, and there'll be some very beautiful graphs and a nice word from our Prime Minister. But that's great, and writing a document is fantastic, but we need to see the spending and the infrastructure in place to help people make the change. Take, for example, cars. So I believe that the government has announced, I think it's by 2030, was it 2030? That they were no longer going to sell petrol cars, 2050, I believe, petrol cars within the UK, which is a big, ambitious target, a really big, ambitious target. But if I was to go and get a Tesla tomorrow, my wife, for example, she's driving one of those Mercedes EQ things. I don't know what it's called. 100% electric car. Now that's great for her because she'll drive it home, park it on the drive, plug it in, and then in the morning she'll drop Lucas off at school and then go to work and charge it at work. Fantastic. But I'd say that round trip is probably 20, 25 miles most. I don't think she's never been to a petrol station since she's had it because it's not going to go anywhere. But for me, I do, oh God, I don't know how many miles, constantly up and down the motorway. Yeah, thousands and thousands of miles. And I'd have range anxiety with a car. And even then, I know, and I've seen the TikToks, and please nobody try to moan too much at me about it, but I've seen the TikToks of people driving to a welcome break. You plug your Tesla in on a fast charger. You get a fast charge, which is around about 25 to 40 minutes, depending on how much you want to top it up. And they're watching Netflix or going to get a coffee and all that stuff, which is great. And that looks great, doesn't it? And you can play the computer games, and you can have your kids sat in your lap, and the steering wheel controls the game. Wow, why wouldn't you do that? But vast majority of people, and I would say I'm one of these people, when I go to the services, I want to drive to the petrol station. I want to stick a load of fuel in my car. I want to go in and pay. And if it's pay at the pump, even better. Yeah. And then I'm straight back on the road and to my destination. That stop's probably took me all in all 10 minutes, if that, depending on how busy it is. That is where the technology really needs to catch up, because it is still inconvenient having to plug your car in.
It is. And as you say, if your wife, if she's got that at home and then at work, that's great. But that doesn't happen in very many places, to be able to just plug in like that. I borrowed a Nissan Leaf probably about, I don't know, 7 years ago from a company I was working with to try it out and tell some of my colleagues what I thought of the electric side. And yeah, it was fairly fast, quite nippy. It was different to what I was driving, but I had to really plan ahead. And over the weekend, I remember I was visiting IKEA with my child, picking up loads of stuff. Where we could park was nowhere near where I needed to be for picking up all the boxes and stuff. And it was an absolute nightmare trying to get stuff. And I just thought, until the infrastructure is better, we're just not in a place. And yes, we're getting that way. But there's definitely still some barriers to adoption on this, isn't there? There's a little way to go.
The anxiety is a big one, isn't it? Again, because we're used to it, we're spoilt, for God knows how long we've had petrol or diesel or whatever it might be to put in our vehicles. And it's a case of, I would say most people watching this, I guarantee you will know roughly how much fuel is in your car. You might say, I've probably got about a quarter of a tank or whatever it might be. Even if I had an electric car and I could look on my phone and say, I can, on the app on a Tesla, I can say I've got X amount of range. I don't know why, but I'd still feel anxious. If someone said to me, right, Mark, you've got to drive to Inverness tonight to meet a client tomorrow in the car that I've got now, which is just a normal petrol car, that in terms of my anxiety level, that would be the last thing on my list. Probably would be getting fuel. It just would. I won't even think about it. I'd probably go to the Sainsbury's around the corner where I am now, fill up at Patey Pump because I don't want to talk to anyone, and then set off. And I probably can make it to Inverness from Leeds on a full tank, so I don't have to worry about it until I get there. But I don't know why, if I was in an electric car, I'd be thinking, what if there's a road closure? What if there's a delay? What if it's like on the M1 when something really bad happens and then you see it close for 8 or 9 hours? If I run out of electricity, I can't just go and top it up. I can't just go get something and stick it in. What do I do then? And I think it's probably going to be a generational thing. So the younger people watching this and listening to this, who have got electric cars or getting electric cars or are soon to be driving, or even my 7-year-old, and by the time he rolls around to be able to get a car in another 10 years, he might only ever drive an electric car. So that anxiety that we have might not be there for him because it's just the way.
Yeah, and I talking about driving to Scotland, I was thinking about this on the way back. I recently had to do a drive to Scotland, and on the way back, I had to fill my car up twice, and that's like £85-90 for my car. And I did think, how much cheaper would this have been if it was electric? How often would I have had to stop? What difference would it have made?
A lot, probably, in terms of the money out of your pocket.
Yeah.
But you are going to pay more for the car, though.
Yeah, but then how long would I have had to stop in between? Where would I have been able to do it? As you say, it's that. And I know you can get maps, can't you, where you electric charging maps where you go and you pick and book places. But yeah, as you say, it's just different. It's going to be a mindset shift for us to do that.
I mean, I would have a Tesla tomorrow, but I wouldn't have it as my main car. I'd have it as if I was rich enough, I'd have it as a toy to play with. One, because I remember I was lucky enough to go into when the Tesla came out. It was a P100D thing, and it had the is it lunacy or ludicrous mode?
Yeah,
where you put it on, it goes like a starship. And I have never experienced power like that. It was just instantaneous torque, and off it went, and it sounded like a roller coaster. Now, I'm old-fashioned as you are as well, Sharon, when it comes to cars. So a car with that amount of power, I want it to whiz, pop, bang. I want to hear the burbling of the exhaust. Yeah, I want to smell the petrol. I want to do all that stuff. And who knows, maybe in 20 years' time, we might get to a point where the Teslas of the future, or when Ford or anybody else gets their act together, or BMW or whatever that might be, to take on the mighty Tesla, they might do synthesized sound. They might do, I don't know. I mean, for God's sake, I had a 7 Series BMW on test a long time ago, and that came, believe it or not, with smell cartridges. So you can put in smells into the car, and it will pump out fresh grass. So it'll make the car smell like fresh grass. And as we know, as we just spoke about before on other podcast episodes, go away and have a look at have a listen to the Cars one, listeners. Was BMW synthesized the sound through the speakers. Anyway, so what's to say that they can't synthesize, in a higher quality? Think of the technology of the future, maybe 10, 15 years down the line, the sounds of the engine and the exhaust backfiring, burbling, the RS4, drop a little bit of petrol in the engine manifold, blah, 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 blah. You get that lovely burble sound, and then synthesize petrol, the smell. Who knows what they could do? But I mean, again, I'm thinking that of a 40-year-old man now. So if I'm 40 now, by the time that happens, unfortunately, I'll have had my time where I'll go, oh, I remember back in the day when this was real and you could go buy a barrel of petrol for threepenny down the local co-op. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, we don't have threepennies now, and Lucas, my 7-year-old, who might be 27 at the time, might go, chill out, Grandad. Yeah. Fossil fuel was so ages ago. It's now just this. So there's a generational shift here. And let me just finish that sort of like analogy off. So in the weekend, I went into Leeds city centre, where I live. And because COP26 is going on, there were quite a lot of marches through Leeds city centre. I mean, you couldn't get a car through the city centre because there were loads of people marching. Must have been, hundreds, if not thousands of people marching through the city centre because of climate change. And I'm stood and I'm watching. I mean, I'm massive. I love the environment. I think what we are doing to the environment is we are absolutely destroying it, and we need to do something different, either now or the future generations are going to do it for us and look back at us and wag their fingers, and so they should. But I'm watching this march come through the city centre, and there's all sorts of demographics in there. You've got young, old, kids, people who look like they're probably students, people who look like the business people, everything in between. And I mentioned to one of them, I said, "Oh, I know why you're doing this. I can see the banners, but why are you doing this?" And after being screamed at that the world is burning, which really wasn't helpful. I know they're passionate, but that didn't really help the cause. They spoke very very calmly. It was peaceful protest about they wanted to see actual change from COP26. Yes, because if you remember the Queen, God bless her, she was overheard, wasn't she, at a recent event before COP26. I mean, cameras and microphones these days are just fantastic. So anybody listening to this, just be careful what you say out in public, because someone can pick it up. And if you're a position of power or a well-known individual, more than likely or not, they will pick it up. But the Queen was overheard by saying it needs to go beyond talk into action. And then ultimately Prince Charles then took her line and used it, because why wouldn't he? When mother said it, I'm good. I mean, that was a terrible impression of Prince Charles. And then you had David Attenborough saying the same thing. I mean, David Attenborough, the granddad of the nation. What a fantastic guy he is. And again, if you haven't seen anything of that, listeners, viewers, go back and look at David Attenborough's talk. It was absolutely brilliant. But these protesters were saying that they want to see something real, and that for me is where we're sort of on a nice hedge now, aren't we? We've spoken so much about the climate. I think this, as we said, the science is completely equivocal. The science is the politicians to finally and hopefully wake up and do what they're supposed to have done, and put plans, policies, procedures, legislation in place to help people like you and me do something about it.
Yeah, totally agree. And it was interesting. And I know a lot less than you do, but when I was looking at going COP26, okay, so there's been 26 of these. What's going to happen between 26 and COP27? What change can we expect to see here? And yeah, I was running around one of the lakes, and there was at the weekend, and there was a few protesters there as well, like children and on their bikes. And I thought, well, this is really far reaching, more than I've ever seen before. It's like this year, it's been much more kind of accessible. Maybe it's me that the first time I've really noticed it as much as this. But yeah, I think there's a real call for action now to go, okay, enough chat. Let's really see what you're going to do about it. What was interesting for me was this 1.5 degrees that I keep hearing about, and how we've got to keep it below that, because over that's huge in kind of the impact to the planet.
It's a point of no return, is that. I think if I remember back to my days at Cambridge, I think that they have various thresholds and scenarios that they would run.
Yeah.
And either degrees, either side, you can either salvage the planet, or not that the planet is going to explode, but the living conditions that most of us currently enjoy, and also the crops that are grown in these living conditions, will be fundamentally different. And that's the thing. So it's very naive to think of climate change as it just being hotter. Now it does get warmer. Of course it gets warmer, but you need to think of climate change as weather change. You can have it a lot colder as a result of climate change. You can have floods, rain, tornadoes, etc., because climate is not just about the planet getting hotter. It is about the changing environment that you are in, depending on where you are in the world. And because we live in such a connected world, we need to think about me sat in Leeds now enjoying a coffee. Where are those coffee beans grown? If I'm having some chocolate, where are those cocoa beans grown? Because if something happens in that part of the world that disrupts their production, that's going to impact me. I mean, arguably, it's not life or death if you don't get, well, some people it is if you don't get your coffee.
Chocolate.
Well, exactly. But in terms of, it is life and death for those people when it comes to their farms. So they're selling those crops to the world market. If they can't then produce those world crops, then what happens to them? Where do they go? What do they do? How do they create a living? And you'll see more and more urban farms. You'll see more and more factory farms where things are grown inside to protect them. And in some ways, that's a good thing, but it's almost putting a sticking plaster over the wider problem that we've got with the environment. But where we have found, as in us as a company, where we found some real success in cutting through all the science and the noise and the protesting and the politicians banging their chest and everybody saying that they're going to do something and then go, I'm going to go and save the planet, but I'll jump on my private jet and then fly this and do that. I mean, we saw that, didn't we, at the start? People coming in on their private jets. I'm a little bit struggle with that one, because I don't really expect the Prime Minister of France to jump on Ryanair. I mean, what do they expect him to do? I mean, I know that Joe Biden comes over from America with all his fanfare, but I mean, come on, he's the president of the United States. Yes, of course, he's got a big carbon footprint when he's coming, but with a swipe of a pen, he could eradicate that and more. We just hope that he does that, hopefully. But just getting back on point, in terms of what we found some real success with people we talk to and cutting through the noise and the crap on sustainability and understanding what it actually means to them, is by getting them to understand what their impact is. So we've had some very interesting meetings over the past couple of weeks and months with some very big institutions in the UK, both commercial, private institutions and government institutions. And what we found is there is a lot to be said around getting the basics right. So what do we call getting the basics right, Sharon?
The brilliant basics.
Brilliant basics. And the reason why we call brilliant basics is no one likes to call anything basic. Why are you so basic when I'm extra? You don't want to call anything basic, but brilliant basics for us is starting by getting people to understand what their impact is. And I don't mean, doing time and motion studies to see how many times you put your unwashed pot noodle tin or pot noodle wrapping in the bin, all that stuff, or peanut butter that you haven't cleaned out and all that. None of that stuff. It's around your energy and your carbon. And think about this from a commercial point of view. So let's say you are a organization. Let's say you've got multiple buildings. And let's say you're a landlord. Let's make it even more complicated here. Why not? Let's say you're a landlord, and let's say you've got tenants, and these tenants are companies. And everybody knows that with COP26 and with ESG initiatives, environment, social, and governance initiatives, and targets that organizations set, that they have to do something with their buildings. Why wouldn't you? It's a big footprint, and it's a good place to start. So I'm the landlord and Sharon is a tenant. Sharon is a big company and Sharon goes to me, right, Mark, I need to do something with ESG here because I'm getting a lot of pressure from my employees and various other factors externally to do something about it. Now, I have got a big footprint within one of your buildings. Maybe I'm renting out an entire building. Maybe she's renting out an entire building from me. And Sharon's saying, well, you now need to do something about this and help me because you're the landlord. I'm happy to support you, but now you need to do something about it. And the landlord will go, right, okay. Challenge accepted. Now I can help you with that. Now, what the landlord will have is they will have various different suppliers to them. They'll have facilities management companies. They'll have people for doing specific equipment. They'll have everything in between, security, cleaning, all sorts. Now, they will go to market and they will try to find someone to help them with this. And this is where we come into the equation because it's like imagine going into a argument between a couple and the man and the woman are screaming at each other. And you're the person that comes in and goes, whoa, yay, relax. This is how we're going to do this. And how you do it is by getting your basics right. And what I mean by basics, it's by showing them exactly how much energy they're using, how much carbon they're emitting, but more importantly, once that energy comes into their building, how that then gets distributed across their building and their wider network if they've got portfolios of buildings. And when you say that to clients, and we've tested this theory out many times in live fire exercises, you will see a light bulb moment for them and go, oh, is that it? Is that all I have to do? Well, no, that's not just what you have to do, but that is where you start. So start by knowing what you're doing, and then we can then start to reduce, because it's a little bit like a bigger macro example of that family that I gave as an analogy at the start, the BBC reporter and the environmental expert going into it. Imagine that scenario here. So what she should have said to the family is, well, let's understand what your impact is. So what where you're spending most of your money on your energy bill. Maybe it's on the dry cleaner, maybe it's on this, or maybe it's on that, well, wherever it might be. Okay, now we know that. Let's change some habits here. Now, it's difficult to change human behavior, but it's not impossible. But once you start to show people how much things cost, I mean, if I did that to my mum and dad, my mum and dad, nudging mid-60s, So when I tell them in the northern as well, so when I tell them how much something costs, you bloody what? It costs what? I mean, you cost what? Right, Mark. I tell you what. Right, I'm not paying this now for that. I'm gonna do it. Turn it off. Turn it all off. That's my dad. So he'll turn everything off, which is not recommended because you're going to put everybody in darkness. But when you show them what's going on and then you show them where it goes, that is a light bulb moment. But this is where it works really well for us, Sharon, isn't it? Because Sharon's got a saying, and I'll say the saying, and then I'll get Sharon to explain it for us. And this is how I think we start to understand what our version of COP26 is within our organization. So what is our mini conference and how can we do it? And Sharon's saying is humanizing technology. So when we put this technology in and when we help people monitor and alert and alarm and report of what they're doing, that's not where it just starts and stops. It's where we start to help them to understand what they can focus on. And then, Sharon, do you want to explain to people then if in that landlord situation and I put in a load of technology and they're going, right, now what? How do we humanize it for them? How do we get them to actually buy into it and actually do something that's going to reduce their footprint?
And buying is a key word there, getting someone to have the buy-in. And to do that, once you visualize, once they're able to see how much data and how much carbon and energy they are using, you can then help them to reduce it, because people are quite naturally competitive. If they can see actually the amount of carbon that I've got is here, I know I've got ambitious green targets, I know I've got to report back to my boss, actually this is where we are now as a baseline, how do we bring that down? You start seeing them going, okay, I can now get invested. So the way that we do it is we don't just go, okay, carbon, your carbon output is this in a metric. We turn it into something that they can compute. So how many trees have been saved since you started this particular project? Or how does your energy output change into the amount of miles that have been driven on the road, so that they can get behind it? And the way that we also do it is to go, okay, so this building's output is this one. This building's output is this. So if you ranked these three, for instance, you can see this one's a bit higher. Why is that? Is that the infrastructure? Or is that the changes and the habits and behaviours of those people that actually live and work in those buildings? And once you start kind of getting under the skin of going, okay, not only can I visualise it, I can understand it, which means I can change it. And that's then when you actually see the power and the action. And that, I think that's kind of a bit of a running theme through the whole of this podcast. Seeing it, understanding it, and being aware of it, great. That's what COP26 is about. But that's what the call out is for now. Where's the action? And that's what we do. We help people understand and see where they're at, so they can then take action and start driving those carbon targets and green targets down, and start seeing, actually, yeah, we are making an impact on the environment. We're behind the sustainability thing, and this is what we've actually done. This is a tangible output of what we've done in our building or across the estate.
And that for me is a killer line, isn't it? Where we are a action orientated business. So if you take anything from this podcast, it is start your sustainability journey by understanding how much energy you are consuming, how much carbon you are emitting, and how and where that energy then goes across your building or your estate. Once you know that, you can do targeted action rather than scattergun approach, fancy brochures, people trying to get engaged but not getting engaged because they don't know what they're doing. They're running around like headless chickens. Target it and make it action orientated. And you just watch not only your team engage with it, but also what happens to your energy bills. You save a ton of cash and you take a load of carbon out of the environment. And for me, isn't that the whole point of COP26? And that's our little micro version of doing that. So please, 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 if you take anything, start by monitoring what you are doing and then see where that takes you.
Yeah, you always say making the invisible visible, yes. Don't you?
I do like how that is supposed to be my line, but I always forget it. We were doing some filming a couple of days ago, and the tagline we were trying to end it on was that, and I just completely forgot it. So yes, by monitoring and alerting and reporting, you are turning the invisible visible. And I think, Sharon, on that note, we will end it there. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. I hope you're well. I hope your sustainability journey is begun. If it's not begun, get it going. And also, if you need any help or any support with anything, just reach out and we're happy to have a chat. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye.